Hello everyone, and if you are a returning subscriber, well, welcome back. So happy you've joined me today. And if you're new here, well, hello there. Thank you for stopping by. The world is in a serious mess, isn't it? I'm smiling because I'm thinking of things, thinking of different ways of thinking, how we can apply that. How is it that sometimes a miracle happens, something that we don't expect in any way, shape, or form? And I am going to tell you a little bit about my life and a little bit about the way my mother thought of me. And you might get an idea in your head after you hear these stories, and I swear to God, they're all true. But first, I'm gonna get you into a headspace. Just close your eyes and listen to the words. Let nothing disturb you, nothing frighten you. All things are passing. God never changes. Patience obtains all things. Nothing is wanting to him who possesses God. God alone suffices. Would you like me to say that again? And think about the words. And I guarantee you, at the end of this video, you're going to see, you might start to think back to your own childhood, your own upbringing. And think about what made you look at the world the way you look at the world now. Because I had a big think about that myself. And I thought about the way my sister was raised versus me. Completely different. Completely different. And knowing this, it's when you're a baby, even before you're born, because you hear things in the womb, that you start forming the way you look at the world, how you approach the world, how your parents treat you right at the beginning. And knowing this, it could have been perfect, could have been, and has made you the person you are today, which is very successful and very happy. Or it could have been the opposite. Not too great. If we know how we started, and we know that we didn't deserve to start this way, or even if we know that, oh, it was a very good way, if you had a very good start, that's something great that you can pass to your own children, grandchildren, friends, just people and children, just people that you meet in the world, how you approach the world. You can kind of pass that along. Because if it was good, you do want to pass it along. And you probably grew up thinking of better ways to do it too. You know, better ways than your parents, things that they never thought of. And that's good. And you have an important mission in this world. Each of us, to change this world. Everyone that is breathing now, and everyone that will breathe tomorrow, that are born into this world, have a very important mission. Because we have to bring this world and the thinking back into a very peaceful, solid, sure-footing, faith-filled, hope-filled. We have to do this, and it's up to us. If you believe that God is going to come back, well, I'm not saying that God won't, but if God comes back and looks at us and says, you could have done something about this, each one of you had a mission. No, don't try to get out of this world faster than you should. Because if things are bad, the most important thing is that we need you in this world right now. We need you to help change this world for the better. We can vote someone into office that we feel is very good. Yet it's not just them, it's us too. They can't do all the work. And if they disappoint us, we can't say, well, it's their fault. It's our fault too. It's what we didn't do. It's how we treated each other. And yes, it is who we voted for, but it's how we make the world around us and how we affect the people and the world around us. Because if each person affects that which is around them, they're going to affect the whole world. So I'm going to say that prayer one more time again. Then I'll tell you a bit about my upbringing. Let nothing disturb you. Nothing frighten you. All things are passing. God never changes. Patience obtains all things. Nothing is wanting to him who possesses God. God alone suffices. That is a famous prayer written by Saint Teresa of Avila. She was a mystic, which is someone who goes into very deep prayer. Their whole life revolves around gardening. Because she said, you can't ascend to the heavens without your hands firmly planted in the soil. If you're not grounded, if your hands aren't in the earth, where life is hidden, life seems dead on the surface in winter, yet life is hidden just beneath it. Things are still alive, even though they look dead. In the spring, they live. So being grounded is very important. And people who become mystics, she was a nun, she was a mother of the order, and she was from Spain, and Saint Teresa of Avila, Spain. And she wrote many books. But a mystic, see, your whole life is devoted to God. You grow things, you sell them. Some monks and nuns make, I'm gonna drink a little something. Just watered down lemonade. They make, a lot of them do make liquor. It's true. They become celibate, they give up something, and then they go into the monasteries and convents and make liquor. But they do make all sorts of things. It's not all liquor. But it is something, and then they pay for their way. They don't live for free, you know. And they live in abject poverty, and most of them are discalced, which means they wear no shoes. They might wear something like a flip-flop, but they're discalced. That's how poor they are. But their whole life, everything revolves around going into deep meditation and finding God within. She called her book, one of her books she really called it Interior Diamond. But we call it in the translation, Interior Castle. She said that your soul is like a diamond with many facets. And within that diamond, within the center of that diamond, is God. And you must go through these many rooms looking for God, but God is within us. And it's a very peaceful meditation, and it makes you very centered. But the most important thing is that you feel the presence of God. You feel that God is real, and God is love, perfect, joyful, free, like your heart bursts open and it's just happy and free and light, no worries. Because, like she said, nothing is wanting to him who possesses God. God alone suffices. I use the pronoun him because that's the way it was originally written. Everyone knew. When you said man, man means humankind, human. That's what it means. And woman means human with a womb. So woman, man. It refers to everyone. And for some reason I kind of prefer the way it was written rather than changing it. Now, nothing is wanting to, I could say those who possess God. But it is really singular, and you kind of are making it plural because it's about centered and oneness. It's about you and God. And you and God together is one. So how can a Trinity be one? In the same way, you and God together are one. You become one. And so the singular rather than those, because she's speaking directly to you. You know what I mean? Isn't like you're in a group and you're going to get lost and somebody else in the group is going to do it better. She's talking directly to you. And think about that. It's very important. You are very important, is what it means. You are very important to God. And saying, nothing is wanting to him, her, who possesses God, or him, her, they. It's a singular, and we want it to refer to a human being. That's what we want it to refer to. So, let me tell you a little bit about my life and why my mother and my whole family thought that I was very different. And I was very different from all of them. Their desires, their anger, yelled a lot, angry people. My sister was born. There's lots of photographs of my sister, my father playing with my sister. A lot of baby pictures. Everybody was happy. And then when I was born, there's absolutely nothing. No pictures. Nobody was happy when I was born. I kind of came into the world and kind of like nobody even knew it. See, to my mother, her mother was the most important thing in the world. And so what happened? Well, she was dying the first year of my life. And then 4 days before my birthday, she died. And my mother didn't speak for 2 years. So my mother didn't speak to me for 3 years. And the year when I was in utero, he was all upset and worry about her mother going downhill, getting older. I didn't exist then either. So I was very quiet. I didn't kick. I didn't show any signs of life. It's like I wasn't even there. It was very strange. And my mother didn't know if it was a boy or a girl. I don't even think I don't know. I don't know. But I heard the story when I was very young, and I wasn't quite sure it was about me, but then everything fell into place one night. She said that the woman in the bed next to her, she went in. The doctor said to cut that baby out now because there was no signs of life. They could not detect that I was alive. It was like I wasn't even there. It's really strange. So my mother decided to wait 4 days instead of cutting her out immediately as the doctor said to do. She said, no, I want her born on my father's birthday. Which is insane. I could be dead in there and then rotting for 4 days, or you could have saved my life, but you waited 4 days, kind of thing. Well, the woman in the bed next to her said when I was born, I was born by cesarean. And which is a very strange thing. I'll tell you what that goes to. The woman said to my mother that she saw a UFO landing on the hospital. Now, I wasn't sure if UFOs were real. I was kind of scared of them. But my mother always said something like, we can't be in this universe all by ourselves. God had to have made something else out there. So she believed it, and she was Catholic, and it was, I didn't know. The two didn't gel, and I didn't know what to think of it myself. But, when I asked my mother, she would talk about my sister. And she'd say, when she was born, the doctor wrote grease lightning. And she was born with her eyes open, because she was first one born, very fast. Boom. No trouble with the labor. She just came right out. And my mother said her eyes were open, and she had a smirk on her face. Same smirk she has now. And I said, Mom, what did I do? And she said, I don't know. I was drugged up. I don't remember. Oh, my sister grabbed the spoon away when my mother was trying to feed her as a baby. She grabbed it away and she started eating herself. And she said that my sister's first word was no. And I said, Mama, what was my first word? I don't know. Probably Mama. It's like I didn't exist. But what happened was how naturally I became a mystic is that I was left alone. Nobody played with me, nobody talked to me. And they say the more you talk to your child in the womb, the more good music and things that you say the child learns in the womb. And the more you talk and interact with the child after they're born, the smarter the child gets. But I was left alone. My mother was just sad over my grandmother, worried about my grandmother for a whole year that she was dying. In fact, in this room. And then she died, and my mother didn't speak for 2 years. No photographs of me, no playing with me, no speaking to me. I didn't exist. I remember being in my room myself as a baby and just sitting there and looking inward, closing my eyes and just looking inward. And I would see such fantastic things. And I felt knowledge coming to me, like I had an understanding about the world. I had an understanding about the universe and how things worked. You know how we see these beautiful photographs of the universe, exploding stars and galaxies, all that stuff. I saw all that. I saw all that as a baby, just with my eyes closed, looking inward. And then when I saw those pictures for the first time, I thought to myself, that's odd. I remember when I was seeing all this and all this information was coming to me, kind of like how the world works, how the world really works. And if you really want to make it big, if you really want to, this is how you act. And this is the kind of person you have to be to make it in the world, to make money. And I said, no, I don't want to be that. I refused it. And something said to me, like, you have a knowing. It's like this knowing. And why would this baby have this knowing? Well, I had nothing else but to look inward. Something said, appreciate and remember everything that you're seeing. Because one day you won't be able to come to this place again. You won't have this knowledge again. And I felt that I knew God. I had a very strong sense that it was heaven. And when I put my head on the pillow at night, I closed my eyes and I would think of this song, this music would come, and there would be this flower. It looked like a flower, but it was like a geometric pattern spinning. And then every time I did that, I would enter heaven. And I did that every night. And I would be in heaven. And I knew that one day, this would never happen again. And one day I wasn't able to do it again. And I forgot about it, stopped thinking about it. And a really odd thing happened not that long ago. I heard Ibn Alexander talking, and he said he claimed that he had died and come back. And that's questionable. But he said that it was an life after death experience. And after he had his experience, he said he went and he read every book on it. And then he said he would put his head on the pillow and he would imagine this spinning like geometric flower and they would play music, and then he would go to heaven. And then all of a sudden one day he couldn't do it anymore. And I was taken back. I goes, I've never told anyone this. I would never tell anyone this, because they would say it's a fantasy of a child. So I asked somebody about it, and they said, oh yes, that's absolutely true. I believe that this happened. And I'm not sure. Maybe he read it in a book and someone else had that experience. I don't know. I'm not sure, because I always weigh the medical side as well as the mystical side. And I'm not quite sure. But somebody had that experience, and it's a very odd thing to make up. But anyway, had a very difficult life. All sorts of abuse. Very serious abuse. Don't want to go into any of the details. And I ended up with a man. Chose the wrong man. And he was very, very abusive. Tried to kill me several times. And I came back home. He isolated me. That's what bullies do. They isolate you away from your family and friends. Across the country. But I made all sorts of friends. And my mother had told me that my aunt and my cousin were saying prayers to Saint Teresa. And I didn't know there was Saint Teresa of Lisieux. I didn't even know this was Saint Teresa of Avila. The only reason why I found out there was Saint Teresa of Avila was that I was at a dinner with my husband and people they had graduated with. And he looked at all the way at the end of the table, long table, and he said, that guy should be a monk. He was kind of insulting him. And then he came all the way down and started talking to me. Didn't know who he was. And he said he was learning about Catholic mysticism and all these saints. that were mystics, and I didn't know what mysticism was, and I could put Catholic with mysticism. Just seemed like neither of them went together. And then for some reason I told him about this experience I had in my backyard. And he said it was like I was walking into heaven. It was like this, all of a sudden, the feeling, the visuals of what was going on. And it felt like St. Francis was going to walk out. I mean, St. Francis of Assisi was going to walk out, and it was very strange. And he said, that's the beginning of mysticism. And I'm going to call me up, and I'll give you a list of books that you should buy so you can learn about this, because it seems like this is what you're being called to be. And I ended up getting, there were 2 books. I got a bunch of books, but there was just too many words. And then I ended up going to a bookstore that was going out of business, a Christian bookstore going out of business. And across the room, there was just empty shelves. There was 2 books next to each other. One I could read, The Cloud of Unknowing. It had been mentioned over and over and over again. And the next one next to it was The Practice of the Presence of God. And I picked that one up, and it said in it that Brother Lawrence was a lowly squire. And one day, he came upon a tree in winter, that had been stripped of its leaves and fruit. And knowing in the spring the flowers and then the fruit would appear, the ever-presence of God had never been effaced from his soul since that day. In all the death that was around him, he knew that there was life within the roots of that tree, and that life was going to bring flowers and fruit. How can it be in all this that's dead? And he said he was more at prayer when he was doing a chore. And he would, when he washed dishes, he said to himself, this pile of dishes, when I get to the end, I'm going to attain God. Each dish he washed, he got closer and closer to God. So at the end, he attained his mystical experience. It's very simple, and it kind of keeps us in the world. We don't have to run away to a convent or a monastery or get away from people. It keeps us in the world, and we can attain God as we're doing our chores. Saint Teresa of Lisieux said that she would offer everything up as a sacrifice to God. Even when she wiped her mouth at the end of eating, everything she did was offered to God. Constantly in the presence of God. So if you're constantly thinking of God, you can't offer anything bad to God. Well, I suppose the sacrifices in the past, but not this God that we know. This God that is pure love. Well, I ended up coming back home. And this whole story is going to get very, very long. And yes, I know if I tell you every single bit of this story, you're going to say, it's just going to be too long. You're going to go away. I know that. So what started to happen? Miraculously, I got home safely from California. Somehow, and that whole thing, that unfolding of that whole story was a miracle. And I had a rose garden, 25 rose bushes. I'd never given a rose away before. And all of a sudden, my cousin was leaving, and I said, let me go pick you a rose from my garden. And I came in, and she said to me, do you hear what you just said? And do you read this prayer? It says, Saint Teresa, please pick me a rose from the heavenly gardens and send it to me with a message of love. Ask God to grant me the favor I thee implore, telling him I will love him each day more and more. Which means saints, we don't pray, they're not God, they don't do the miracle. They're your friends in heaven, like Saint Teresa found God through little things. She loved the child Jesus and nature and roses, and that's how she found God. And so a saint is a friend in heaven, and we know they're in heaven because when we pray and what we're asking for, a miracle happens, that means they're there, they're with God. And that's why they require, it used to be 3 miracles, that used to be the law, and now it's only 1 miracle to make someone a saint. And so you pray, you're just asking them to pray for, like you ask a friend. Protestants do this too. You ask a friend, could you pray for my mother? She's not well. Could you pray for my father? Could you pray for me? That's what it is. And you ask your friends, people that you trust, people that you know their belief in God is similar to yours, you know? So you know how they're going to pray. So you trust in that prayer. So you're asking your friends. Well, what happened was I started giving roses to people by chance who were saying the St. Teresa prayer. And then they told me afterwards that it was the 5th day of saying that prayer. And they got the rose because St. Teresa said on her deathbed, she died of tuberculosis at the age of 24, which is 2 dozen roses. That she would not go to heaven. She would spend her heaven doing good on earth. And she will let rain down a shower of roses. And it's catching me and making me cry because it's true. It's true. I started giving roses away, and when I wasn't at my garden, I was downtown, something said to me, just go buy 2 roses. I just had the feeling. Then I went to church. Why not go to church again? And I had the roses with me, and during the peace offering in Catholic Mass, you turn around and you say to the people around you, peace be with you. You offer them a handshake, sign of peace. Peace be with you. And instead of a handshake, I turned around and I gave this rose to a woman behind me. I said, peace be with you. Very unexpected. I didn't have a bundle of roses, though later on I would. And strange things started to happen because people would come to me and tell me some truly miraculous stories. What happened was I went to church every day, then once a week at the Rosary Mass, and I would bring roses for all the elderly people who were praying the Rosary. And one would get the bouquet at the feet of the Blessed Mother, which you don't pray to her, you pray through her, because we've become, Jesus gave, when he gave his mother to John, woman, behold your son, son, behold your mother, he was giving her to us, and we pray through her. She was the perfect vessel that she was the Immaculate Conception. She was born without sin. Of course, Jesus was not born with sin either, but she was the Immaculate Conception, meaning without the sin sexually, because she had a mother and a father. We don't believe that God, the Holy Spirit, worked a miracle in her mother Anne's womb. Though she was a miracle, the only miracle is that the blood of her son was applied to her retroactively. And And a French-Canadian priest tried to, so when people ask me, why is the Blessed Mother so special? And he said, if you were God, and if you could make your own mother, wouldn't you make her real nice? So you're God, you could make your mother really, really nice, couldn't you? So that's why she's really nice. And by praying through her, she lays our prayers at the feet of her beloved Son, and in a garland of roses. So it's like we're giving a garland of roses to Jesus. And the prayer is to Jesus, except she carries it in a garland of roses. It's beautiful, and it's not pagan. You say, oh, that's pagan. No, when you truly understand it, you know it's not pagan at all. So, I'm going too long. I know it. Well, here's the miracle about this whole thing. Then I started giving roses on her feast day to everyone in the church, to shut-ins. I would buy 600 to 700 roses every year and give them away, because I thought to myself, I had such a miserable life. And I said, well, why bother working so hard? And then one day, maybe you'll become something, or you'll go to college, or you'll, accrue wealth. I said, my life has been miserable so far. Absolutely. Why don't I just do something and just live a miracle, live in God? Because I said to St. Teresa, when I first started giving the roses from my garden, I said, St. Teresa, apparently you're using my garden. Here are my hands. Just guide me to whoever you want me to give the roses to. So things happened, like a woman I'd given the rose to, she came up to me at a church. It was called the Cabaret. The choir, I was in the church choir too, and I had a cabaret, and it was the old church next to the newer church. And this woman came up to me and she said, when you gave me that rose, my mother died. And I was shocked because I didn't see anyone drop dead in the pews. And as she stood there, over her shoulder, you could see there was a picture on a very old piano. We're talking about a piano that's 150, maybe 200 years old. I don't know. And you didn't see the piano, but there's a picture of St. Teresa, and she was all dressed up. She tried to make herself look like she was older. She was only 15 because she wanted to join the convent. She wanted to prove to the Pope that she was old enough to be a nun. So I'm talking to her. She's talking to me and telling me this story about her mother dying when I gave her the rose. And I see St. Teresa smiling at me over her shoulder, because it looked like right there over her shoulder, but it was across the room. And she said that her mother's birthday was on the 5th of January. And she said her mother told her she wanted her to sing the Ave Maria at her funeral. And she said, Ma, I can't do that. I can't do that. And she said, I looked up at the clock the moment you gave me that rose. 7:55 in the morning. I went home. My brother called, and he said at 7:55 precisely, he heard a thud in his mother's room. His mother was bedridden. She never got out of bed. Completely bedridden for years. And then he walks into the room. She'd gotten out of the bed. So this shouldn't be sad. It should be, it should be really happy. It's so hard to believe that it's true, but it is. And she dropped. There was a picture of St. Teresa that she was watching every day from her bed on the wall. She got up and she walked over to the picture and dropped dead. Needless to say, the woman said, I envy her, because she died on St. Teresa's feast day, and because we had to delay the funeral because my sister had to come from abroad. She was buried on St. Francis of Assisi's feast day, October 4th. He's my favorite saint too. Both of these saints were my favorite. And she said, I got up there and I sang. And my sister said, I can't believe you could do that. And you're smiling. She says, I envy Mother. And the women, there's many other miracles, but I'll tell you about this one. The one, remember I told you I went downtown and just decided to buy 2 roses. Before I had started giving them hundreds away on her feast day, but I would give about 50 away a week. My mother came out of that same building, and some kind of church event, she walked into the car and she was stunned, and she said, a woman came up to me and said, is that your daughter? And she said, yes. She's done to me one of the kindest things, or the kindest thing that anyone has ever done for me. I was at my daughter's bedside, and she was in the hospital with a brain tumor, and she was dying. And I was beside myself with grief. I didn't know what to do, and I knew there was a mass in the afternoon. So I went to mass, and your daughter turned around and handed me a rose during the peace offering. I put it by my daughter's bedside, and she recovered. It wasn't the only, many things. And well, let's get back to the UFOs. And when I realized what my mother, they always thought I was different. They always thought I was weird. I didn't think like anyone else. I always was living on the ethereal plane. One night I was right here, and I was writing poetry. And something said to me, there are angels on the other side of the window. They're outside. Open up the window. Open up the window. The shade was drawn. Now I don't have shades, just curtains. Open it up. There are angels on the other side. I even had jotted right in the notebook in the prayer. It wasn't a prayer, it was a poem. And then my mother came downstairs and she says, I've been upstairs, and there's something over your window, and it's shining this light down on everything, and it looks like they're beautiful lilies bursting out of the trees, the plants, everything is blooming and glowing, and it looked like the shape of a boat on the ground. And she said, then I heard it didn't go this way like it was car lights. It was up and down, but everything was so beautiful and was shimmering, and these flowers blooming everywhere. And she said, then it left, and it left upwards, and then it kind of dissipated. The lights dissipated. And I went to open my window, and she said, no, don't open the window. they're coming to get you. They're coming to take you back. And I realized that my mother, all these years, when I was born, the woman saw the UFO, and how I made no signs of life in the womb. All these years, she thought that I was from somewhere else. And they're coming back to get me. And it was very strange, because I had a shaman. Somebody referred me to a shaman. And the next day, he called me out of the blue. He never called me something, you go see the shaman, you give him money. He does this healing stuff over you. And he's also was in the some kind of medical thing, I forget. Something about the muscles, not a massage therapist, something else, something higher than that. And he said, something told me that I had to call you. Something happened, and I had to call you. And I told him, I said, how strange, how strange. Well, here it is, the thing that I think is really going to help. Now, I'm telling you these stories I'm telling you that miracles, things that are out of the ordinary can happen. When we let ourselves go and we just say, God, just take my hands, just do what you want. And we open ourselves up to, we're no longer doing anything for selfish reasons, but wouldn't it be wonderful to give roses to everybody and make everybody happy? Just do things like that. It seems absurd, and it's extremely costly. I've given so many roses away. It would just boggle your mind. That more things are possible than you realize. My sister's very successful. She's got a PhD in ethnomusicology. She's the smart one who makes all this money, all these houses, stocks, and retirement funds, and 24 karat gold from her in-laws, because they're from India. And I became something else. I looked at the world differently. I was extremely poor. I came from a horrible situation. I didn't know what my future was going to be. He could come back and here and kill me. He tried to kill me out there. I think, you see, why did these things happen to all these people? They were praying, they came to God. They were all praying for a miracle, weren't they? And then they got the rose, where St. Teresa said that people need something tangible to know that God has heard their prayer. That's why she would not go to heaven. She would spend her heaven doing good on earth, giving roses. People need that. And once you have that, and my God, I've got the rose. I prayed and I asked for a rose. The rose signified that God heard your prayer. St. Teresa would send it, or allow it into your hands. Open up the channels, allow it to come into your hands. But God had heard your prayer. And it's that moment knowing that God heard you. And you have this rose in your hand. How did you get this? This is impossible. These kinds of things don't happen. People don't go around giving roses away suddenly, or thousands, or whatever. This doesn't happen. And the hope happened instead of despair. Despair was changed to hope. They went to church and they were praying in this despair, except there was hope. I wanted to give hope. So your joy, your happiness, your hope, your belief that God exists can change the life, and the belief that miracles exist can change the life of someone in despair and hopelessness. By your surety of being, by your groundedness, your sure-footedness on the earth, where your head is in the heavens but your feet are firmly planted in the soil. It opened up happiness and joy. And what is this coming out of nowhere? And it's such a simple thing. Granted, you don't have to give as many away as I did. And there are so many stories that would, if I told you, there are so many miraculous stories. Why did so many happen is the question. It's because of that joy. They let go of their despair, and the door opened. You know, if you let go of that despair and you open the door, and then there's hope and the belief in God. That no matter what happens, even let's say the worst does happen, the joy never leaves because you know that God exists. God, let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. All things are passing. God never changes. Patience obtains all things. Nothing is wanting to him that possesses God. God alone suffices. Now, look at the world differently. Think about what I've told you. Everything I've told you was important. I had to tell you that story. And there are bits of that story that make it even more of a miracle, more unusual, that would blow your mind, but this video would be too long. So I give this to you. And I don't think many people are going to watch it, because I think I'm just going to stick it on the Sparkling Seven Speaks. Because I think if I put it on WickedFelina, most people will just watch 5 minutes of it and then shut it off. And maybe putting it in the right place, in the channel where you expect stories about God. Let me stick it there. One day maybe I'll tell you the rest of those bits of the story. That you'll be amazed at just how many miracles unfolded. Patience obtains all things. Nothing is wanting to him who possesses God. God alone suffices. Amen. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for joining.